Okay, so this video will be the second demo video for our first project. First video had to do with making the abstract geometric line drawing. That was going to be the preliminary drawing for our sculpture, our first project, involving line and plane and open structures. So we're using our bamboo skewers to create our piece based on our preliminary drawings. We have the needle nose pliers with the cutting section towards the bottom of the pincers, hot glue gun, hot glue, and our Olfa knife, which will be used for cutting the cardboard. So with the hot glue, I'm sure everybody has either bought a hot glue gun or has used a hot glue gun. It's pretty straightforward, low tech, low cost, but very effective. The trick is to not burn yourself. So be careful. Once the hot glue is, once a hot glue gun is hot enough to melt the glue and for you to be able to squeeze the trigger and get the glue to flow, that glue is really hot. If you get it on your fingers, it sticks and it'll burn for the duration until it cools down enough that you can peel it off. Main thing is to be careful, okay? Okay, so once the hot glue gun is hot enough, we can begin. And the idea is to build something along these lines. This can be considered the beginnings of a structure. Of course, this has to be larger. The minimum requirements in terms of dimensions of the sculpture, 12 by 12, or an approximation thereof, 10 by 14, 16 by 8. So in piecing together these bamboo skewers, I overlap them so that there's more surface area that you can glue together as opposed to gluing one end to another, which in woodworking is called a butt joint. And this would be an approximation of what's called a lap joint in woodworking, overlapping elements, making sure that there's enough surface area so that you can secure them and the joints become stronger. So this is the idea. So to begin with, I might suggest taking your needle nose pliers and your skewers. These are 6-inch skewers. The skewers you bought or that were on your list are 12-inch. Taking the needle nose pliers, placing the skewer all the way towards the bottom, and cutting the sharp ends off if you wanted to. Sometimes students will use those for effect or aesthetic effect. But they're a little trickier to glue one to the other, one sharp point to another. So you can cut these down to whatever size you need, and since you have longer skewers to work with, then you have more flexibility as far as the length of these. So I'll cut down 4 of these. If I need to cut down any more, I will. And begin the process of piecing them together, maybe using this as a kind of a guidepost. So I might begin by piecing together a corner. So I would apply enough hot glue to one end of that skewer. And you're always going to get these little trailing ends of glue. Get rid of those eventually. And secure it, or apply one into the other. It's going to take a minute or so for the glue to dry completely. You might place it off to the side. I have a small piece of cardboard here to protect the drawing board. Otherwise I would get a lot of glue on it. So just trying to keep it clean. And whatever surface you're working on, try to keep it clean. And I would recommend using some scrap cardboard, for example. To do that, you can also place the glue guns usually come with a small stand that will help keep it upright. This one's not functioning anymore, so I'm just laying it down on the side. But with the glue, the point of the gun over the cardboard, because the glue might tend to drip. So I lost a glue stick on that. The stick that's inside the glue gun right now is too short to work. So I have when that happens and you're squeezing the trigger, you're not getting any glue out of it, you need to insert a new glue stick even before the old one is used up. So that's what I'm doing here. So this should be pretty good, but at this point, once the glue dries, it's very strong. So you end up with a very sturdy piece once that glue dries, but it does have to dry completely. And if you wanted to, for good measure, add a little more glue, you can do that. Make that a little bit stronger. And again, you end up with all these little thin trailing strings of glue. And once this is dry, we might create another corner, and I would add glue. We might consider this a base, the beginnings of the piece. You can start with the base and work your way up. And then place the crossbar, let's say, on top of that so that they're even. Let that dry. Maybe add a little more glue. If you want them to be square, make sure they're square. And you have about a minute of working time before the glue dries. During that time, you can make adjustments as needed. Okay. So again, the idea is that these structures are being built based on the preliminary drawings that you made, and you're using those as a jumping off point. You don't have to replicate the drawings exactly, and I want you to explore different options within the drawings. I wanted you to try different methods of establishing balance, working with symmetry, asymmetry, radial symmetry, but then incorporating various elements from the drawings within one unified piece. So let's see, that might be dry enough to add an additional component, and I can work my way up. Add some glue, and maybe add a vertical element to this right here. Hold that in place. Keep your fingers free of the hot glue. And making sure that it's perpendicular to the horizontal elements as best as you can. And again, I cut these down without really measuring or anything. They're almost 6 inches long, but you'll be working with longer and shorter pieces, and using scale, the relative size of one element to another, one closed off section to another, for example, is part of the project, so let's keep that in mind. Let's add a triangular crossbar over here, and I'm going to apply glue to the 2 sections in this case. And line it up. And voila, we have a triangular section, the beginnings of a piece, and sometimes while the glue is still a little wet, the pieces tend to shift, so keep an eye on them so that they don't dry in such a way that it's not working, it's not lined up, and you can always take your Olfa knife and cut between the skewers and remove something and redo it. It's, this process is pretty flexible. You can take your pliers, needle nose pliers, and cut off any ends that are extending. So having this, I think, is sufficient to show you the beginnings. I can also add another corner element to that, and again, build up in any direction that I would like to go in, and any angle that I would like to work in. So at this point, what I'll do is turn off the video for a second and get ready to cut cardboard so that I can show you how to add a flat section or a planar section to this sculpture because this piece incorporates line, which is what we're working with here. Basically, it's like drawing in space. Open forms and then planar elements, all of it working together in unison and looking to establish a sense of balance and harmony and equilibrium. And then we add color to that. So let's take a short break. Okay, so I added another element to create two triangles in the corner. And what I'll do now is add a cardboard piece, a flat planar element in one corner. You could do both. Keep in mind that these pieces will become complex. They'll have interior, exterior elements. It may be a little tricky to insert cardboard elements within a piece if there's too many projecting elements blocking you. So you might have to plan ahead. But the idea is towards the end to, once you've established and created and constructed your linear open form sculpture, with an eye towards using your preliminary drawings, but eventually translating that two-dimensional information into three dimensions, and being very aware that you're translating something that exists on a flat plane, on a flat page, into something that exists in the round. That we're going to be looking at this from different points of view, and to make sure that it looks good from all sides, that it looks balanced and harmonious. The next step is to add the planar elements, and these should also work with your sculpture as an additional component, helping to establish balance and variety of scale, and we're going to distribute the colors that we'll be working with as mentioned in the presentation. So what I would do at this point, I have a scrap piece of cardboard. Here I can just lay down this piece on top of the cardboard, line it up as best I can. Take a pencil and mark off where I want to make the cut. And I have my Olfa blade right here. And these Olfa blades are really nice. I believe this is the exact same blade that's on your list. And they extend quite a bit, so you want to be careful. These are sharp blades. The nice thing about that is that we'll be using this for our foam sculpture. And for carving the foam sculpture, extending the blade so you have the full length of the blade, or half the blade. For example, this has been cut down a bit, is going to be useful. It makes for a good carving tool when it comes to working with foam. The other thing is that, I'm not sure if you can see, or maybe you've used these before, but the blades are scored. So once you've used up the front part of the blade, because for the most part, when you're cutting something like cardboard, you're not going to have that much of the blade extended. Line up your needle nose pliers. This is a perfect tool for this. Line it up with the score mark, snap off the front part of that blade that's become dull, and extend it again. So to cut the cardboard is pretty straightforward, nothing fancy about that. Line up a metal straight edge, which again is on your list. Do not use wood, do not use wood, do not use plastic. The blade will just eat right into it, will cut right into it. And this is pretty thin cardboard, but whenever you're cutting something like foam board, for example, try to use a couple of passes. I'm going to do that anyway. I'm going to use 2 passes. That's the best way to do it, so that you get the sharpest, cleanest cut. If you're trying to do something like a 1/4-inch foam board in 1 pass, if you have a new blade, a brand new sharp blade, you might be able to pull it off. But if your blade is even just a little bit dull, the material will just begin to bunch up underneath it, and maybe you've had this experience, and you won't get a good clean cut. So the trick there is to do it in 2 or 3 passes, and to have a good blade, a good sharp blade. All right, I need this piece. We can set this stuff aside. Let's see, which one of these did I mark for? Does it really matter? Fits pretty well. This fits a little better, so I think it might have been this side. So what I'll do at this point is apply glue to the edges of the cardboard. Again, keeping your fingers clear. And apply glue just enough so you can get that on there. And then you can always apply a little more later. Make sure it stays in place. Kind of tricky, but it's doable. And again, you have about a minute of working time. So we'll try and be somewhat neat with this. Actually here, I think I prefer this line, but I don't know if I can adjust it at this point. We'll leave it there. This line running parallel to the skewer looks a little bit cleaner than trying to overlap it, but you can do it either way. At this point, let it dry. Let the glue dry and begin the painting process. So that's the whole idea behind this project and the beginnings of the three-dimensional component that's based on your preliminary drawings.